Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, we can hear you, yes.
Okay, so we are now ready to go and to start.
Good.
Okay, and thank you very much, dear colleagues, dear friends. Sorry for the slight delay in starting. So there have been some technical problems with the server structure. But I'm very happy that we can start now with the panel 2, Innovation and Accessibility of Medicines and Medical Devices to Patients. And I think this is a very important topic after the topics already addressed this morning and the notes from the politicians and ministries. So what we like to do now here in the afternoon is to report to you on the joint EMA and HMA European Medicines Agencies network strategy to 2025. Which sets out how the network will continue to enable the supply of safe and effective medicines, in particular in the face of science, medicine, digital technologies, use of big data approaches, globalization, and emerging health threats, particularly such as the COVID-19 pandemic in the situation now. Our network strategy identifies goals and objectives for each of these areas, which EMA and the HMA will translate into concrete actions in their detailed work plans. The focus of this network strategy will also be, as it is for the event today, on the topics of access and innovations in the field of medicinal products and medical devices. So I'm very happy that we have two experts well known to you. On the one hand, Emma Cook, Executive Director of the European Medicines Agencies, and on the other hand, Sven Henkusens, the Director of the Latvian State Agency of Medicines. They will give you a deeper insight today, and they will now share with you the ideas behind our strategy to 2025 and what this looks like in more detail from the EMA side as well as from the Heads of Medicines Agency side. So no further words from my side, so I hand over immediately now to Emma Cook, and please present your views from the EMA side of you.
Thank you very much, Carl. And indeed, it's a pleasure to be here. And I listened into the panel discussions this morning. So I think it's really an apt time now to discuss the European Medicines Agency strategy to 2025. Before I start, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Portuguese presidency for putting this event together. The topic of access and availability, and in this context also innovation, or issues that we really have to deal with if we're going to meet the needs of the European patients. So what I want to do today is to talk about the European Medicines Agency network strategy, and particularly the themes that focus on accessibility and innovation. I'm not going to cover the issues related to shortages because these were already covered earlier today. Okay, so what I'm going to cover is to look a little bit about the development and finalization of the strategy, and then focus straight in on the themes on the accessibility and availability and on innovation. And then I will end up with some implementation plans. So the European Medicines Agency network strategy to 2025 is a strategy that has been agreed by the European Medicines Agency, which I'm representing, but also the heads of medicines agency of all the European Medicines Agency across Europe, and also the European Commission. And it's born of reflections taken into account in environmental analysis, which ended up with the agreement on 6 strategic focus areas for the next 5 years. You've heard today about the pharma strategy, but it's also aligned with the regulatory science strategy, which was published last year, and there are a number of interdependencies with other initiatives. In order to come to the development of the final strategy, there was a lot of consultation with the EMA committees, with our working groups, but also with the HMA working groups. And the recommendations for action are planned to be implemented through the multi-action annual work plans. But of course, stakeholder consultation is really important to get this right. So we've had an extensive stakeholder consultation, and this ended up with the finalization of the document in November 2020 and final publication in December, including a high-level summary of all the input that we got from the stakeholders. So I'm not going to go into this strategy outline in the interest of time, but I want to stress that the network recognizes the need for change and the need for international collaboration and communication, and to engage with ever more fully with all our stakeholders and partners. And this means sharing our respective views of the challenges ahead, how we can best work together to address them, and really stressing the interconnectivity. So here you see the outline of the strategy. You see the 6 strategic focus areas. But I want to, even if I'm looking now at 3.1 and the innovation, which is 3.3, there are large interconnectivities between all the focus areas. For example, supply chain challenges are closely related to the availability issue, and tackling antimicrobial resistance is also linked to innovation. So the first theme is about availability and accessibility of medicines, and of course this is the main theme of this conference. And we've divided this theme into a number of goals. I'm going to focus on the goals on the strengthening the availability of medicines to protect the health of EU citizens and animals, and also the goal of optimizing the path from development through to access for beneficial medicines. Some of the first theme, which is focused on availability, looks at the root causes of unavailability, and we're trying to target regulatory measures to address these, and looking at removing national barriers to availability, sharing best practices, and increasing transparency. The second goal, which is about optimizing the path from development, is really focused on collaboration between regulators and other decision makers. And some examples of what we'd like to see and we want to achieve under these goals. For example, for low volume products such as pediatric formulations or medicines for rare diseases, we need to understand better the reasons for lack of access, and that will of course help us to address it. And if we look at the achieving part goal 2, it'll include work on fostering innovation in clinical trials. So coordinated guidance on complex clinical trials, for example, will be part of what we're trying to achieve in this area. And overall, we expect that as a result of this work, medicines that address unmet medical needs would have broader and earlier access coverage. Now, as I mentioned, tackling shortages has been extensively addressed in panel 1. So I propose to focus on objective 2 and objective 5. Goal 1 Objective 2 and Goal 1, Objective 5. And Goal 2 is about addressing biosimilars. And I'm sure you're aware that Europe is a leader in the regulation of biosimilars, and we've just celebrated 15 years since the first authorization of the biosimilar in Europe. But there are still problems with uptake of biosimilars in some member states. So one of the areas we want to address here in terms of availability and accessibility is to work with fostering awareness of biosimilars with healthcare professionals and patients. And there are some excellent examples of best practices, particularly in the Nordic countries. So we need to embark on communication campaigns for healthcare professionals and patients to help really improve the uptake of biosimilar medicines. And then just talking a little bit more about transparency of availability and launch of medicines, because having greater transparency on this will help us to target regulatory actions and also our communication with patients, healthcare professionals and HTA bodies. It's really great that we now see the movement of the health technology assessment legislation and coming to fruition under the Portuguese presidency. So this is the time where we will be working to improve information exchange, guidance and methodologies for evidence generation, so that the needs and expectations of health technology assessment bodies and payers can be incorporated into the product development plans. So theme 1, still on the subject of availability and accessibility. We have a number of objectives, as I just spoke about, the better scientific evidence, which will serve multiple stakeholders in the chain, including regulators, health technology assessment bodies and payers. And we also want to include evidence to support post-licensing follow-up and the possibility to adjust decisions based on new evidence, so that we can ensure a life cycle approach to evidence generation. We feel that the area of communication to patients, healthcare professionals, as well as downstream decision makers is really key to helping to address information gaps and inform about medicinal products, which especially those that are authorized based on more limited scientific data or even secondary endpoints, such as orphan medicines and medicines for rare diseases, where it might not be possible to do the large-scale clinical trials that healthcare professionals and downstream decision makers might normally expect. We're also looking at new metrics, because to help us understand what accessibility of medicine means in terms of real patient access means that we have to have metrics to measure this. So we're looking at how we can develop these new metrics to really make sure that we do understand how authorized patients lead to access in different markets. And finally, under this theme, we want to foster alignment of compassionate use programs, because there is still quite a difference in the approach to compassionate use programs, which means that there is an inequity of access for patients, particularly at late stage development. And it would be great if we could harmonize the approaches and also use the data from compassionate use programs to help improve the input of data to support later decision making. So moving then to the theme of innovation, if we want to improve and expand access, we also need to foster innovation. And the first goal relates to catalyzing the integration of science and technology in medicine's development. And it's all about ensuring that the network has the competence, the right competences to support innovators at the various stages of a medicine's development. And some examples of what we mean here are the idea of building knowledge and expertise across the regulatory network. We need to identify gaps, and we could work with academic institutions to help to build training modules and address these gaps. We need to support the integration of scientific and technological progress in the development of new types of medicines, for example, precision medicines, biomarkers, genomics, advanced therapy, medicinal products. We need to make sure that this will ultimately benefit patient treatment. We want to implement an EU model for horizon scanning, which will make us more aware of what's coming up so that we can address competence gaps. And we can also prepare regulators, HTA bodies, for what's to come. And then finally, under this goal, we want to improve the implementation of novel manufacturing technologies so that manufacturing in Europe can be more efficient, so that we can move on to the next stage of advanced manufacturing, and again, lead to greater access and availability. Also under this theme, we're also talking about better evidence generation. Again, looking at the quality of the evidence that will be needed for all actors in the life cycle of medicines. And here again, we're looking at the clinical trial process, the regulatory framework for emerging clinical data generation, but also at leveraging non-clinical models and the 3Rs principles so that we can optimize capabilities in modeling, simulation, and this will be particularly helpful in special population initiatives. We want to further develop guidance to help various groups involved with scientific advice and with regulatory guidance. And this is really going to help us to collaborate with other stakeholders, including small and medium-sized enterprises and research and academic groups. To help us leverage research and innovation in regulatory science, we need to work closer with academia, and the area of collaboration with medical device experts and notified bodies is particularly important, as many of the new products that we're seeing today have device and medicine components. We're just seeing the implementation of the new device legislation on the first phase of which will be on the 26th of May. We have the potential of additional competences in the device area under the extended mandate. And all this means that we have to increase our collaboration with the medical device experts so that we have better knowledge sharing and a better basis for decisions. We want to promote early interaction to increase awareness of the regulatory requirements and translate these into so that the research can be translated into medicines that can be authorized and reach patients. And we need to ensure effective and appropriate regulation of products that are combinations of medicines and medical devices. So we're moving, at the moment, we're moving now to implementing the strategy and I'll focus on the implementation that we're doing at EMA level, because I know that Sven is going to address the implementation at the HMA level. So we are implementing this within our multi-annual programming work. We have three main pillars: on product-related activities, on strategies, and public health activities, programs and projects. And we're just at the stage where we're looking at reprioritizing from a strategic perspective, bearing in mind that a lot of our resources at the moment are going to our COVID-19 activities. So we've had to look very, very carefully at all the plans and deliverables that we've identified to really see what we're confident that we can deliver, and really prioritize those ones that are going to make a difference. We still believe that 2021, that COVID-19 pandemic will continue to dominate and be our prime focus, but there are opportunities for us to build on what we've learned from COVID-19, on communication and international activities, on digital innovation, on the work on the extension of the EMA mandate, that all actually feed into the implementation of aspects of the availability and innovation parts of the strategy. We'll continue together with the HMA to collaborate to identify and translate actions into our work programs and implementation plans, and we're committed to providing regular progress updates and a review of the strategy every 18 months. Let me end this short introduction by saying that a medical product, no matter how innovative it is, or how basic it is, it has absolutely no value unless it reaches the patients. The EMAN strategy is designed to ensure that we see the value of all medicines, fostering both innovation and accessibility. And this is something that we need to do together with the network and with all of our stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Emma, very much for this presentation. And due to the time constraints, I hand over immediately to Sven to complement from the Heads of Medicines Agency side. So it's yours.
Hello, and thank you very much. Let me just very briefly thank the Portuguese presidency for the wonderful conference, and I applaud for the organization of it. I guess I will have to share my screen, or presentation will be, yeah, it's coming up. All right, if we now go to the next slide, I would just like to take the opportunity to, if we go to the second slide. I would like to use the opportunity to say a few words about the HMA network, because EMA is very well known, maybe HMA a little bit less. So as probably most of you know, HMA network is composed of national medicines agencies, and we are working together to make sure that we have effective operation in European regulatory system. And we want to make sure that we share our resources to make the maximum output, and we share knowledge that we have, and thereby build a better network. And obviously, we have a shared mission with that of the EMA by protecting and promoting public health, which is of course the main principle which inspires HMA and also European Union. And if we go to the next slide, I just want to say that we are not starting from scratch. We had our previous strategy from 2020 that was joined for European Medicines Agency and Heads of Medicines Agency. That was the first strategy that also ended up in a working plan, of course, and it is now being transferred to the new working plan. And I think it was a wonderful success story for the network that inspired us for the next strategy. If we go to the next slide, I just want to say that in the umbrella of the first strategy, we already have conducted a multiple of activities. And for the purpose of this conference, I would like to underline that we have a dedicated working group for accessibility and availability issues that is working on monitoring and mitigating shortages. And if we go to the next slide, another important milestone is, if we go to the next slide, please, previous one, is on the business continuity plan, because as you know very well, we are in a crisis situation when on the one hand we have limited resources due to pandemic, limited human resources, and from the other side we have new COVID-related submissions, we have shortages, and we have to make sure that we are delivering at least the core activities that we have. And we want to make sure that when we prioritize, we have the same principles for handling regulatory procedures, both in central authorization procedures and national authorization procedures. And of course, the bottom priority is that we have to make sure that core activities during crisis are being carried out. Now, if you go to the next slide, when it comes to innovation, digitalization, I would like to underline that again, we have, as they say, the ball is rolling already. We have big data steering group and we have telematics working group that are already working on a number of activities that are essential to make sure that eventually we have e-pill or patient information leaflet, that we have single monitoring, shortage monitoring and tracking system, that we can forecast medicines demand in the same way throughout Europe. And when it comes to innovative therapies, the discussion on application of new methodologies such as data extrapolation and modeling and simulation is going in the same direction throughout Europe. Now, if we go to the next slide, I will now talk a little bit about the implementation process. And on the next slide, as already Emma mentioned, that we are two organizations. If we go to the next slide, you will see that each organization, although we have the same strategy, but each organization has its own way of organizing implementation. And as it was already mentioned, EMA has a programming document, while HMA has working groups through which it is implementing its work, and it is being described in the HMA multi-annual work plan. And in the implementation process, we will follow the same 6 strategic directions. And for each strategic direction, we have, I would say this time, very inclusive approach. We have invited all agencies. So even if we have 2 agencies from one member state, because they have separate vet and human medicine agency, we have invited all of them to join in. So in total, we have almost more than 40 agencies that have joined at least in one of the implementation teams, and each team will be led by one team lead who will make sure that eventually the multi-annual work plan is aligned. And the first step, the multi-annual work plan has to be coordinated with the working groups. And in this picture, you see that each of the 6 teams will coordinate with at least one of the working group to make sure that the plan is aligned with the working group's actions. If we go to the next slide. As regards implementation timeline, as it was mentioned, EMA has approved its programming document for 2022. We are planning to approve our multi-annual work plan at around June. And as it was mentioned, in light of the current circumstances, we will focus on the first activities that we will prioritize as Action 1 priority, and priority 2 and 3 will come later as we have more resources available to implement eventually the strategy. If we go to the last slide, here I just want to underline that from the existing crisis, we have learned that working together is a great way to make sure that we advance very quickly. And in this case, I would say that we have wonderful results. We have 4 fully authorized vaccines, which is, I would say, a good result on world scale. And if we support each other, if we share best practice, we can very quickly develop each other, moving through an upwards going spiral. And through transparency, through being the first network that has, for example, identified adverse events related to vaccines, it facilitates better policy implementation. And of course, it has to be underlined with clear underlying work program that again has to be implemented by working together. That brings me to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much, and I wish a very fruitful discussion further in the panel. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sven, for your presentation, and I hope that you see how the heads of medicines agencies network and EMA are working together to implement this strategy to 2025 to improve the situation with medicinal products and take into consideration all the lessons learned from the pandemic situation, which underpinned a lot of requirements and necessities we are facing in the future. So looking to the time schedule, we are already to the difficult start. Moving on to the breakout sessions, and we have set the scene now in the 2 presentations given by Emer and Sven's, and now we will go to the breakout session on 4 special topics to discuss in more deep than special aspects for our strategy and how can we use it. So due to the time schedule, we have 100 minutes available for these breakout sessions. So we will start with the 4 breakouts, which will have 40 minutes each. And then thereafter, we will come together again. Every breakout session has rapporteurs. They will make a wrap up to 5 minutes for every session, and then thereafter there will be still 30 minutes for a broader discussion and feedback on these topics. And I would like to shortly introduce the topics of the breakout sessions. In session 1, it will be access to medicines for special populations. This is done by Helena Fonseca, the Portuguese member of the PETCO, and she will be joined by Violeta Stojanova-Beninska. She is chair of the COMP from the Dutch agency, and they will be the rapporteurs for this topic. In the breakout session 2, we will discuss unmet medical needs, in particular in a view from patients and health systems needs perspective. And here, Elizabeth Casalinghem, the managing director of the European Multiple Sclerosis Platform, and she has a lot of experience in the European Patients Forum as well. She will be the rapporteur for this group. This 3rd session on repurposing of older medicines may add new value on patients' access to new therapies. So repurposing drugs is an important topic now in the COVID situation as well. This group will be led by César Hernandez, the head of department of the medicines evaluation of the Spanish agency. And the fourth session, generation of evidence for a better patient access and health data space and big data. How can we use that in the future? Here the rapporteurs will be Xavier Kurz, one of the leaders of data analytics and methods task force at the EMA. And he will be joined by Nikolai Brun, the head of medical evaluation and biostatistics division at the Danish agency. And I think they are both experts in the field. So they have been over the last years very active in the big data steering group of HMA and EMA. And I think they are the right persons to lead you to this group. So I think with that, we can start then with the breakout sessions. And I would ask the technicians now to break up. Everybody, as I know you assigned beforehand to which group you would like to go. So I wish you a good discussion, and I think we are looking forward to your feedback and results in the breakout sessions. Thank you.
Dr. Carl Broich, good afternoon. Speaking, we need your help. We now need to go for a small 10-minute break. We ask all participants to enter the breakout sessions, the chosen ones.
I heard by the technicians that break for 10 minutes.
That is correct.